Hi, and welcome back to Kim's Cozy Corner. If you've never been here before, I'm Kim, and I am gardening in Zone 6A, Southwest Ohio. And if you've been here before, welcome back and thank you for joining me. In this video, I am going to do a garden tour. And I'm finding that my videos are getting a little long because I want to tell you about everything. So I am going to divide this tour up into what's growing in the main garden space and what's growing across the way at my neighbors, as well as in some ancillary places near the home. Because I still want you to see everything, and I want you to see the progress after a couple of weeks. I have a video out there where I'm giving you updates only on my 11 GreenStalks that I have throughout my gardening space. This particular video, the first video that I'm going to share with you, is a video of the main garden area. So I'm not going to be talking fruit trees. I'm not going to talk GreenStalk. So when I walk past that GreenStalk, it's going to be hard for me not to talk about it. But we're going to just focus in on just the main garden space. So here we go. So here's my she shed where I like to just sit and hang out. The great thing about my she shed is that it faces east. So the afternoons are awesome sitting on the front porch of my she shed. But as you come around my she shed and you're entering into the garden space, the first area you come to is this little walkway right here. In this space here, I have celery in the front. And then I have a row of zinnias and straw flowers, which they're not really blooming yet, not the straw flowers. And then in the back, I have sweet peas that are really starting to come up the vine. So let me show you some of the flowers here. So in the very front, that's celery. Behind the celery, I have zinnias, and the zinnias are starting to bloom just a little bit. And behind the zinnias is the sugar snap peas. And beside the sugar snap peas, because that's only halfway, on the other half, I have pole beans. Pole beans are a vining type bean, and they usually produce a little later than bush beans, but then they produce all year long, and they're already starting to climb, and they're going to climb up this trellis right here into this arch space. Behind those pole beans and behind those sweet peas, I just had so many zinnias left. So I planted a whole row of zinnias back there. So hopefully it'll provide some beauty just behind this trellising area, and I can look out the window and see all of the beauty. On this side of the trellis, along the front edge, I have some marigolds. Behind the marigolds, you're going to find some winter squash. I have Australian butter squash. I've cooked this squash, and my family believes that they're eating sweet potatoes when I cook it. So my goal is to grow as much of this as possible so I don't have to purchase this in the future. And then at the very end in this space here, coming up the trellis, I have some honeydew melon trying to grow there. Now, I've never had great luck with melons, but hopefully we'll get a better harvest this year on melons. So I'm just focusing right here in the front. And behind it here, I have some iceberg style lettuce. So there are 4 heads of that, and it's starting to head up. So that's going to be some delicious lettuce. Just behind the arch, I have some flowers right in the middle there. And running along the back of this trellis here, I have cucumbers and some more melon. And as you can see, the melon are very small in comparison to my cucumbers. I have brassicas, and I tell you, we've had a little rain lately, and I gave it some fertilizer just a few days ago. And this is a red cabbage, a green cabbage beside it, another red and another green. In the back, that red cabbage right there was nothing. I didn't think it was going to survive, and now it looks amazing. And then the two plants with the stakes on it here, this is actually Brussels sprouts in those two plants. And Brussels sprouts, as the season goes on, can get very, I'm going to say, long and lanky and fall over. And I'm going to do the best I can to try to support them straight up until I harvest the cabbage that's planted all around there. Behind it on the trellis here, I have many different types of tomatoes growing. So all of these are indeterminate tomatoes. They're black tomatoes, red tomatoes, beefsteak tomatoes, orange tomatoes, yellow tomatoes, all tomatoes back there, and all different varieties. I don't believe I have two of anything in that space back there. The one thing that I do want to share about my garden and everything that you see in it is that all of my vegetables were either started from seeds and I transplanted them out into the garden, or I started them from seeds directly in and sowed them into the ground here. So I am super excited. This is the first year I've ever been able to do that. In this green container here, which obviously needs some water, I am growing ginger. So I have ginger in 2 green pots, and I just planted it yesterday. So hopefully we'll start seeing that take hold after I put some more water on it, because that's super dry. I also planted okra, not my favorite vegetable, but I did plant some about a week ago. And it's already poking their little heads up in the back of this bed here. So in the very back, that's okra, and there's okra there in the very back as well. But in the front, I have 2 different types of summer squash, and they're starting to really fill out and look really nice. One of the other things that you're going to see in all my beds is I finally got my leaf mulch down. So I have leaf mulch in all of my beds to help with the weed suppression. And honestly, it's just going to add more nutrition back to the ground. In the very front, those are 2 cabbages in the front. And in the back here, I have cauliflower. And I tell you, this is some of the best looking cauliflower I've ever grown. The weather has just been perfect for it. And then these last 3 on the end here are different broccolis, and there's a head starting to form on the broccoli in this space. And right next to it there are some more, some onion. I have onion along the front here, and then I have peppers in the back here. That's cauliflower, and along the back here as tomatoes all the way along this 10-foot bed. And then tucked away right along the outside of the bed, I have some leeks. Oh, I forgot to mention, right here in the front, that's celery. I was trying to get like 5 celery plants, and I think I ended up with like 50. I still haven't planted it all. There's just so much more celery. So the peppers are doing really well. Some of them are already starting to get tall. And so I've put some stakes in the ground here next to the plants, just in case they need to be supported. My super hot peppers, my datil, my baggio, my serranto, I only have 1 plant of each, and they are actually doing really well. I tell you, the baggio is probably the best pepper plant I have. It has little bitty buds on there where it's trying to get ready to bloom. And down here, I have collard greens in this space. And then along the back edge of the bed here are cucumbers. Down here on this end of the bed, I have all cherry tomatoes. I only have 1 plant of each kind. So I have sun gold, I have the black cherry, I have the Sweet 100. I have Champagne Bubbles, Grandpa's Minnesota, which I know nothing about. It was a free seed, so hopefully it'll be a good plant. And I have a black strawberry. So I have more cherry tomatoes than I know what to do with, to be honest with you. The leeks are also doing really well. They're very skinny, but they're standing at attention. They're healthy. They look like they can put on size any minute now. This particular plant right here is a marigold that came back from last year. So I have marigolds on the edge of this bed and they're coming back. This next set of tomato plants are all red slicers. Nothing special about them. There's some Abe Lincoln, Coaster Lee, Terracotta. Well, that one's not red, it's more of a brick, brownish orange color, but I have another Abe Lincoln, a giant crimson, and I planted a big mama right here on the end. So this bed is fully filled out. They're starting to get very happy in their space. In this bed, I have my rhubarb, and this rhubarb's looking nice. Next year, this is rhubarb here, and this is rhubarb. It should take over the whole bed, and I won't be planting anything else in this bed. But this year, while the rhubarb is trying to get established, I stuck in a few marigolds in the corner. I have one curly kale there where I had nowhere else to put. I have just a few garlic back here and a few more flowers on the back side. And along this back edge right here, I have just a few more okra. Now the okra that I put back here can get really tall, so I wanted to make sure I put it in a place where it would not shade out anything in the garden. 100% garlic in this bed. That's all there is, just garlic and a lot of garden cleanup that I need to take care of. I have stuff laying everywhere. Oh my goodness. Garden cleanup will come later. It was more important to get the vegetables in the ground. I'm just going to keep moving through the garden here. In this particular bed, I have cabbage, 10 different cabbage. And in this particular one right here, I tell you what, that moth and that green worm just has just eaten it all the way down to the ground. So I hope that it'll come back, but the cabbage looks healthy. It enjoyed the fertilizing that it got here a few days ago. In the very front, I have more onion, lots and lots of onion for us to preserve for the year. And in the very back of this bed, again, I had way too many tomatoes and I stuck them anywhere that I could. I am putting orange tomatoes back here, or a yellow, orange, rainbow type style tomatoes back here. So there's a pineapple, a Dr. White cheese, and a rainbow back here. So 3 tomato plants that we will grow up this trellising right here. This bed has bush beans in it. So there are jade beans in here. There are blue lake bush beans in here. Dragon tongue bush beans are in here. And it's just a small 2 or 3 by 2 foot bed. So it's not gonna put off a lot of beans, but more than enough for us to play with since I have bean in so many places. And these back 3 plants are 3 different types of eggplants. Well, 1 type of eggplant. I think they're all diamond eggplants. This bed has all of my tomatillos in it. Now, I only wanted like initially 4 tomatillos. You need 2 tomatillo plants in order to get fruit. So I wanted to ensure that I was able to get fruit, but I think I had probably a dozen. I'm gonna have tomatillos coming out the ears and I'm gonna be making so much salsa verde out of them. But there's tomatillos back here with a few flowers just in between because I had so many flowers. In front of the tomatillos, I have broccoli. And this broccoli was actually started indoors. It got long and lanky from lack of sun, and I actually need to harvest it. Look, they're opening up and starting to flower. So once I cut this, it'll promote side shoots to produce additional broccoli. So we will get each and every one of these heads harvested today. And then there's some broccoli over here that we started later in the season. And then in the very front of this bed, I have 3 cabbage, and that's another vegetable that I just had so many of. So there are 3 cabbages there. From a tomato standpoint, I call this bed my specialty tomatoes because these tomatoes are not red in any way, shape, or form. They are all different colors, anything but red. So there's a black beauty in here. There's a big rainbow. There's a Cherokee purple, a Dr. Wyche's, a black brandywine, a Kellogg's breakfast, and another black beauty. And they're almost touching the trellis. So in another week or so, I will be tying those up to the trellis. In this next bed, same very similar setup that we talked about before. I have onions down in the back here, and I have one lone broccoli there in the front, but onion in the back, and then I have my tomatoes. And then instead of a row of onion, I have a row of flowers in front of these. Now these tomatoes are different. These are my beefsteak. These are hopefully going to be my 2-pounders. One slice will make a tomato sandwich type tomatoes. And I have a variety of those, and I have all of my labels on now so you can see them. They're steak sandwich and bodacious and super steak and watermelon and delicious. And I threw in a giant crimson because I need to throw those in anywhere you can get them. Then I just put a second round of tomato plants. So there should be 2 of about everything in that bed. This bed, same thing. Onions close to the edge of the bed. Then you get to the tomatoes. And on the back side of this next bed is all broccoli plants. So the tomato plants in this bed are all paste style tomatoes. So meaty tomatoes with very small seed cavities for my sauces. Now, I will make sauce out of any kind of tomato, but I don't have to cook it down as long when it's a paste tomato. The different kinds are pink oxheart, Fer-de-lis, Gibberty, however you say those, Big Mama, Italian heirloom. I tell you, those were some of my biggest tomatoes last year. And I have at least 2 plants of each in here. Now in this bed, I had a nice volunteer potato that kind of sneaked in, and I'm just letting it do its thing. So we're gonna let that potato go ahead and grow and see what happens with it. Speaking of potatoes, I have roughly 30 containers over here with many different types of potatoes. All of my potatoes were purchased from seed potatoes except for maybe a couple containers. Here are a few pictures of my girls harvesting potatoes that we started in the indoor grow space, moved outdoors. They enjoyed playing in the dirt, finding all of those treasures. The types of potatoes that I grow some early, some mid, and late season potatoes. I grow so many different varieties. So I'm growing some russet potatoes. So I have a Rocky Mountain russet that I'm growing. I have some Pontiac. Those are red potatoes. I have some Sapomir, which is a potato I've been trying to grow out of Europe forever. And I started about half of these potatoes one week, and then a week later I started the other half. But all of them are big, they're bushy, they're green, they're doing really well. And you know you have potatoes when you have flowers on your plants. And some of those first potatoes that we put in the ground, look at that. That's a prairie blush potato, and that's actually an early potato, early to mid-season potato, so it should be ready in about 90 days. and it already has a few flowers on the plant here. So that means there are potatoes growing in that container, which is exciting. This is one of the last beds that I've added to this overall garden. And in this bed, it's a little wider than most, and I have a little larger path between beds because I learned my lesson. I couldn't get my little wheelbarrow through there, so I had to start spacing them out. But in this bed, along the front, I have flowers, and behind the flowers are cucumbers. Cucumbers need a pollinator, so I wanted to put as many flowers around those cucumbers as possible so that I can ensure not just great germination, but I wanted to make sure I had great pollination. They're just now starting to take off really well. They had a little bit of transplant shock when I put them in. I didn't have a chance to harden them off for weeks and weeks like I did some of the other plants because of my travel schedule. Behind the cucumbers, I have what I call mild peppers. So they're not super hot peppers, but they're not sweet either. They have a mild heat to them. And so these peppers include my jalapenos, my poblanos, my ancho chili peppers, and I have multiple of those in this space here. So I call it medium heat peppers. And the reason why I'm spacing them out in my garden is because if I'm traveling and my family has to do the harvesting, I tell you, they mix the peppers up every year. And when we think we got sweet peppers, they're hot peppers, and it's a mess. It's a hot mess. So we wanted to make sure that that was not the case this year. In front of the peppers are all cauliflower. And again, they look amazing. They are very beautiful. Very, very beautiful. And just to the side here, I do have 3 lettuce plants growing in the ground. I have 2 butter crunch on the ends, and in the middle is a heading iceberg type lettuce there. They're starting to do really well. Now this bed gets shaded out in the evenings just a little bit by the tower and the shade from some of the potatoes. So that's why I made sure the very edge of the bed had lettuce, which could stand just a little bit of shade. So the lettuce that you see with the reds and the greens and the browns, these are all lettuce that I started indoors in my indoor grow space back in, I believe, February. Some of it still looks really good and it needs to be harvested. And some of it has started going to seed, as you can see with this one here. Now, eventually I'm going to need to do something with this because I have more lettuce growing than I can eat, which is not uncommon this time of year for us. But I'm going to need to do something with it and, of course, replant that container so we can keep the vegetables coming. This container here are some more bush beans that I started. I had tons of bush beans, I had tons of potting soil, and I had pots. That means that we need to fill them with something. So the bush beans have broken ground in this pot here, and they're starting to come up. Now this is a mixture of bush beans. They can be anything but purple. There may be some gold beans, some dragon tongue beans, some green beans. It's just a mixture in that pot there. Now I mentioned I had extra soil, I had extra pots, so we needed to fill them up. So I have another pot here where I started some more beans. Again, it's a mixture. I'm not sure what's going to be in this pot. Some of these look like this one right here, looking at it, I believe that's going to be a dragon tongue, but it's a mixture. We will see when they come up. Right next to it is a type of squash. And of course, there's no tag in it. But this squash is either one of the 2 round zucchini or round summer type squash. Don't remember which one it is, but I had 2 of those, so it's one of the 2. The other one is in this pot right here. Now that one's a tondo. If that's a tondo, then this is a Zappo or Zap something another. I'll put it up on the screen so you can see what type it is. This container here is a type of squash. It's a Zappa squash. So if that's a Zappa squash and that's a Tondo, then that other squash is neither. I don't forgot what I planted. I don't have to go check my videos. This is a Zappo. It's the round squash like I'm talking about. That's a Tondo. It's a round squash. I guess the one in that green pot over there is going to be a surprise. We'll just have to figure it out. It's probably some type of crookneck yellow squash or something of that nature, but we'll see when it grows. So let's take a panoramic view of the garden so you can kind of see it all together, how it works together with the trellises and the beds and the flowers in this space. So as I mentioned, I am going to break these videos up so that you're not having to sit for 40 minutes as I talk about all of the things that are going on in my garden. I'm very passionate about what's going on in the garden, and I want you to see everything. I want you to experience it with me, but that would take hours. If you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up as always. I need to know that I am creating content that you want to see and that you want to hear about. Also, subscribe and share my videos with others, because if there's something you're getting out of this, hopefully they can get something out of this as well. Thank you, and come back again real soon. Bye-bye.